Okay, I think we are live from Microsoft Ignite. 50% anyway, as the title of this little live indicates. I'm just going to do a quick check on LinkedIn to make sure we are live. I believe we
It's
are.
funny,
So,
isn't it? When you do this live stuff,
yeah.
there's that moment of like, someone give me a thumbs up that
Yeah.
we're live and the audio's working.
Someone confirm. Someone in the
It's
chat
like,
say you are
yeah,
live. I think we're good to go.
someone put cabbage in the chat if it's live.
Just give me something here to say we are live. But I'm pretty sure we are good. So at least Restream says we're
Yeah,
good. It's being seen somewhere
there we
by
go.
some group.
Someone's watching.
Let's go for it. So Josh Blaylock here, joining Neil Fluster out in Seattle from Microsoft Ignite. Neil, how is the show going so far, man?
It's awesome. It's my first Ignite. I'm breaking my Ignite virginity here, and I am sleepless in Seattle. I wake up at like 3 o'clock in the morning every morning. It's crazy. I haven't adapted to the time zone very well, but it is an awesome city, and it's an awesome event. This is like a new convention center, like super fresh and clean. The old one's up the way, and it is like absolutely mint, shiny, and beautiful. Do you want a quick 360?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's see it. Yeah, and the reason why I love to see it
Okay,
is because
so
I have been to Ignites of the past, but I haven't been to the last two
yeah,
that have been in Seattle. So Orlando
okay.
and Atlanta, and for those of us that are familiar with those, but we haven't yet made it to the Seattle gathering, I'd love to get a vibe, a feel of the event there.
Yeah, sure. So it's a mad five stories of build out. Again, I'm sat on this kind of weird wooden staircase that runs next to the escalators. I'll spin you around. So you've got the freeway out the window there. So that's beautiful there. And then you can just probably see down the street. There's the sea out there. And then we're up here on the third floor. I'm sitting now. It's quite quiet at the moment because there is a keynote going on. There's another keynote today.
Okay.
But at some point, just to warn you, there may be a load of people suddenly coming out and coming and sitting next to me, or there might be someone photo bombing or video bombing behind us. But
That's okay.
hopefully the noise suppression on the headset will be good and everything will be golden. So yeah, it's an amazing venue, really an amazing venue, and super clean and yeah, very fresh.
Yeah.
Because I think it literally only opened 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty cool. And 6,000 people or 4,000.
I saw that. I saw the number 6,000 on X or something somewhere.
6,000.
Yeah, so that's, which I think is more than the first. I think the first year they tried this there, they were at like at 3,000 or 4,000. So sounds like they're increasing that a little bit. Maybe starting to think about wander back toward what it was a few years back before the pandemic. But I appreciate you doing it live, because for people like me, I wore my FOMO shirt today because I'm suffering. Many of us are suffering. Now, this is a CommsV Next FOMO shirt. Little plug for CommsV Next. But the sentiment applies to not being there in person. So thanks for sharing the experience with us. Yeah. So what?
It's funny. There's definitely a vibe here, and it was funny going down to the keynote yesterday. It was rammed. It was we were at the end of the line. The line was literally round the corner of the building, and it was like almost like sleeping bags queuing outside the keynote yesterday. And for me, it's really bizarre because I said to my colleague, yeah, exactly. I said to my colleague, I was like, we're like, I don't know, 200 meters. I don't know what that is in feet for the Americans, but you know, we were like way back in the big auditorium, big ballroom, and we were watching Satya on a screen. And I'm like, but we were in the room. We were in the room with him, but we were so far back, you couldn't see it. So again, we were watching him on a screen, but we were in the room with him. So it felt, you know, you were close to him.
Well, I mean, that's kind of what you got at the keynotes with Satya and it Ignites Past, right? Is you're in this massive auditorium, and if you're up in the nosebleeds up there, you can kind of get your binoculars out and see him. But otherwise, you're watching it on one of the 3 or 4 big screens up there. So sounds about the same. Yeah. And I did get confirmation from Mr. Jimmy Vaughn that he is here. He is in the comments, and we are live.
Jimmy Vaughn.
Thanks, Jimmy.
Love it.
Thank you. You saved us.
Very cool.
Now I can stop sweating that we're wasting all this time and actually not streaming to LinkedIn.
I quoted him on my coming to. I don't know if he's seen it. Like he has this thing about quoting Copilot 3 times and magic happens. So that was my my video to him was my Instagram and video I put on LinkedIn of Copilot 3 times and then being transported to Seattle. So thank you, Jimmy.
Boom! If I would have known that, I wouldn't be sitting here wearing this FOMO shirt today. Jeez.
Yeah, you just say it 3 times apparently, and that's what.
Thanks
you do.
a lot, Jimmy.
3 times. It's like It's like Beetlejuice. That's what it is. It's a thing.
Okay, that is awesome. All right, so what we're going to do is we actually did have a point to this live today, in case you're watching the first 5 minutes and are like, what are they getting at here? We are going to be talking about some of the announcements, lot of announcements, and we are not going to cover all the announcements because, frankly, it's really hard to keep up with that much news, and not all of it is super relevant to the area that we focus in on specifically. So what we're going to do is cover mostly teams, rooms type of things, but we'll go beyond that because, like you just mentioned a minute ago, the name of the show is probably going to be changed at some point to have the word co-pilot in it, I would assume, because it's just so co-pilot heavy. Before I share my screen, though, and we get to some of that news from the blogs, because that's what we're going to do. We're going to go over to the blogs that Microsoft has put out and work through the stuff that we care about, skip over the stuff we don't care about, and then we'll kind of go back and forth on some of those points. Before we go to that, though, let me ask, what has stood out to you? Being there, watching the show on stage, in person, getting a feel for that vibe. What are some of the announcements that have stood out to you?
Yeah, very cool. There's lots of stuff that was around kind of Azure and data center and the whole Copilot stack that they were talking about. And NVIDIA were on stage. There was a lot of talk about processors. Microsoft have got this processor that they're bringing out. And again, I geek out on all that stuff, but I'm not in that world of Azure and all that sort of stuff. Copilot was the word of the day. Again, I don't know. I lost count of how many times it was quoted, and it was across everything. Again, the Copilot came into everything. But on the team side, if we get drilled down onto that, there was two things that I really liked. One was Matt Taylor did a demo of something that they're calling shared display mode. It was around BYOD, and I liken it to PowerPoint presenter mode. So we've probably all been there in a meeting, or does French call it, or BYOM, whatever you want to call it. But you've got your laptop, you plug in your HDMI, or you plug in your Air Media, or your whatever click share device you're using, and it shares your whole desktop. Everything verbatim goes to the front room monitor. And then you get a chat come through. Yeah, this meeting's dragging on a bit. Or have you seen Dave over there? He's half fallen asleep. And that's obviously up on then the big 105-inch Jupiter or whatever it is at the front of the room, broadcast to everybody in the room. So this shared display mode is clever enough or intelligent enough, probably got some AI in there from Copilot, but it's clever enough to say, okay, once you plug in an audio puck, I think it is, and the HDMI or a USB-C, all I'm going to share is the video component of Teams, not the chat, not your WhatsApp messages and all the pop-ups coming up in your system tray, just the video. So again, it's a bit like the PowerPoint slideshow mode of you get your slides and your notes and on the left-hand screen, but on the front of room screen, you just get your slides. So I love that for BYOD and really kind of maximizing the real estate. So I love that one. The other one that I loved was, and I forget the person's name who demoed it, but there's this, and I forget the proper Microsoft name. Again, Jimmy probably knows. If you know the name of what I'm going to talk about, put it in the comments. This is noise suppression idea, and it feeds into this smart speaker, which we'll talk about probably in a second. But it's the ability, and noise suppression's been around for a while. Again, in a previous life, in a previous company, we had lots of acoustic gating and fencing, and it is basically a noise gate in most of the hardware. It looks for dead noise. There was a demo we used to use with like popcorn, and you used to shake the bag of popcorn, and then you'd start talking, and the gate would open. But this seemed to be the way they were talking about it was actually like facial recognition, but for voice. And it would then just tune in and laser focus in on Neil's voice. So again, if there's a load of people chattering behind me, it would take the frequencies of my beautiful King's English and just give you Neil and block out everything around me. So I really liked that, and I can't wait to have a play with that and fiddle with that. And again, if you know the proper name for it, Jimmy, stick it down below so we'll know what it's called.
Yeah.
They were my two.
Both Neil and I were like sitting there trying to, what is that called? What did we, and looking through that, we could not find. I know it's in the blog somewhere.
There'll be a fluffy marketing name for it, I'm sure.
There is. That'll probably change and over time. So just but no, the great feature. That's very cool. Both features are awesome. So that's great. And I know a couple of those that stood out. I know we're going to talk about in a minute too. For me, one of the ones I wanted to call out, and I wanted to call it out just because I don't know, hit my funny bone. It wasn't one that I'm like excited about. I'll just say that. I was like, oh, that's interesting. It's interesting that it was prioritized from a development perspective, but it's one of those AI infused help you feel better on camera experiences. So there's value there, and I that's interesting. But I didn't plan on covering it in depth in this. But the whole what is that, like, beautify your background feature?
Yeah.
And I saw a lot of people sharing it on X yesterday. So I'm guessing a lot of people really like that, you know? And the whole idea there is you can clean up your background where you're not replacing your background, but you're using your regular background and modifying it with AI, cleaning up clutter in the background, adding little sparklies in the background. You know, I don't know what else to say at this point. That's coming. So any thoughts from you on that one, Neil?
I've got quite an opinion when it comes to the whole virtual background piece. I've spent a lot of time in my home studio. As again, the people that do this kind of stuff, like you, there's Michelle Bowman and Jimmy as well. We set up our home studio with a nice physical backdrop behind it, you know,
right.
shelves, lighting, whatever, to give that stuff. The trouble I always find with the virtual backgrounds is they're not perfect. So you get that kind of halo. It doesn't matter, again, what camera you're using, how good the quality is, how good the lighting, you always get that halo. And I find it so distracting around people's head if you start to see bits of room. And the other thing is I always think, what are you hiding? Why won't you show me your room?
Right.
You're hiding your dirty washing or, you know, something in there that, again, maybe that's my untrustworthiness of whatever but yeah, it's a cool feature. I mean, again, it's really cool.
And it's got its place.
It's probably using DALL-E or some kind of AI through Copilot, but it's very cool. But yeah, I think just spend some time and make your background look professional. In reality, not in virtual reality.
I think the gist of it there is it's not for Neil and I, but it has its place, so enjoy as it comes out. But
yeah, have some fun.
Okay, with that, let's switch over to the blogs, because there's a couple blogs that I'm going to touch on here, and this first one is massive, like truly massive. So we are not going to spend a ton of time on here because it covers not just teams' rooms, but it covers teams, and it covers Copilot everything. Copilot.
They probably got Copilot to write it.
Yes, probably. They must have, because it was so long that they had to have Copilot in there. So, but let's not gloss over that too quickly. I don't want to just pile on the Copilot bandwagon. It's great. It's cool. There's all that good stuff, and there's a lot of news with Copilot, so that's worth talking about, especially in the Microsoft Teams realm. There's a lot that's happening there. You've got, you can see up top, there's customization and granularity with settings that are coming to play to give administrators more access on data protection, whether transcripts are retained or not, how Copilot works in those scenarios. So some controls there. Obviously, composing teams, chats, and channels makes total sense. You're going to leverage Copilot to take that maybe well-written post that you had and make it sound that much better, because what you've got to say just isn't good enough. I'm sorry. That's just my own little take on the... Anyway, Copilot's awesome. We have chat...
There's a whiteboarding thing as well. There was a whiteboarding piece that you could... it could, like, take your content, and it would then make a white Venn diagram or whatever and give you some really nice visuals from a whiteboarding point of view. So that was quite cool as well.
It does. You've got channels integration in here. Calls, if you're in the calling space, which was my background for quite a while before focusing in on meeting rooms. Having that post-call experience from Copilot that's super valuable. Going to be a big deal for those that spend time on the phone and customer support, especially. But then there's a number of other things that come into play with Copilot in here, and we just don't have the time to wade through all of those. So this main post that came out yesterday, I highly recommend that as you have about a month to wade through the entire blog post, spend that time, read through it. There's a lot there, which blew me away. It's like Microsoft they are innovating. They are bringing a lot to market.
Yeah.
And some of it's already there. Some of it is to come. So you have to grain of salt with what the timelines are for each of these features. But there you go. So AI and Teams, Copilot,
Ask Copilot to summarize the blog post, and then I think you'll be golden.
There you go. Use Copilot for that help. There it is.
There you go.
Decorating your background. Taking
Yes.
Yes. What is there and
it's never as
beautifying
good. It's never as good as that.
No.
Never as good as that. They've not got halos. They're using Canon 5D Mark V cameras and Elgato HDMI capture cards to get 8K video into Teams.
Totally team certified.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm not going to talk about it. Sorry, Jimmy.
Okay. Teams, rooms, and devices. We're going to skip over this section just because we are going to cover that mostly in the next blog. The BYOD part, though, we'll cover while we're here. And this is, they talked about, Microsoft talked about this at an event, forgetting what event it was that they covered this in, not too long ago. Maybe it was at Enterprise Connect last.
It was Ilya did it.
Yep,
yeah, Ilya did it
right.
at Enterprise Connect.
So some more details around that. If BYOD is something that is an important part of your organization, and I know that it is for a lot of customers, even if they're doing proper room systems, there's BYOD is still a big ask. You've got the ability to manage that on various levels that is coming into the portal.
Yeah,
so
and you can report on it as well. I think that's a really powerful thing. Again, I did an interview with Ilya a while back, and when he was talking about it before our Modern Work Summit, and one of the things that he said about it is that you're going to get metrics. So at the moment, you've got no idea who's doing BYOD. You've got loads of great metrics in Pro Portal and Teams Admin Center around Teams room system usage, but you've got it's like the Wild West of people doing BYOD. If you're doing it, sensibly in this way, then you're going to get those metrics. And you can say, okay, that room down the hall was used every single day for BYOD meetings by loads of different teams. You go, okay, well, maybe we should upgrade that and put a full MTR in there, give them a better experience, give them that full fat MTR experience. That one the other way, it got very dusty and no one's using it. Yeah, we'll just leave that as BYOD. But it gives you visibility. IT or whoever is managing the rooms facilities gets visibility by doing it this way, as well as the shared device mode and all the other cool stuff that's coming with that. So yeah, I think it's definitely adding some value in that space and helping customers to define, should I go to a full MTR in those spaces or should I stick with BYOD in that? So I think that's really cool to give them that data.
Those extra insights are, they're very valuable for a number of reasons. And a lot of that has to do with IT spend, right? And making sure the right tools are in the right room. Maybe you envisioned one way it needed to be, and it's just not that way. And you have those insights now. So there's a lot happening there. Digest this on your own time in greater detail, but I'm excited to see Microsoft embrace the BYOD side of the story because it's a very real part of that. Let's take a blog break to go back over to the chat here really quick, and we've got a Mark Whitaker.
Have we got a sponsor? Do we have a sponsor that's going to do this?
Not yet. No sponsors yet. But we did have the whole voice suppression, voice isolation is Mark Whitaker.
Okay.
Mark Whitaker chimed in, let us know what that is. Thank you for that. And decorate your background. He corrected us. Even we came to that in the blog eventually. But thank you for keeping us on our toes. And Craig Durr has some very interesting comments as well about themes he's seeing. So that if you're reading and following along, check out the chat there to see what Craig's got to say in that space.
He's awesome. We love Craig.
Craig is great. I love running into him at each event and doing videos together and just chatting. He's got great insights and fun guy to talk to. So, Microsoft Mesh. This is one of those that. So
never decorate your background. No way. Okay.
Do you want
to start?
Yeah. Let me go ahead and start. Neil and I were chatting about this.
You go first.
Neil, we were chatting about this before we went live, and I was pleased at our conversation because as I've gotten on panels and things with Tom Arbuthnot and Rob Scott from UC Today and those, and chatted through some of these advancements, I'm always that one guy in the corner that's like sitting there with my arms folded like, oh, we got to talk about virtual reality today. All right. I'm just having a hard time envisioning it. It just feels like playtime for the kids on the playground instead of productivity in meetings. And I know that I may be off base with that, and a lot of people have different views on that, and I sincerely hope that it is something that is adopted in a meaningful way, given all the development that's going into it. Clearly, Meta has made very big bets in this space as well, so it must be going somewhere. But let's just...
And they're here, by the way. Meta are on the third floor. They've got a bunch of people with headsets, so they're here at Ignite. So
makes sense.
Meta are here with a booth and stuff.
That makes sense, and that's interesting to hear. But we'll just say that I'm not bullish on the mesh side of things. Not just with Microsoft Mesh, with this way of interacting with each other as a vehicle into the future. But having said that, I really want to hear your take, Neil. So please chime in.
Do you think it's because we're getting old? Do you think that's what it is? And the kids that are all on TikTok probably love this stuff, and it's just us being grumpy old men, maybe. But
you're forcing me to look in the mirror, Neil. I don't appreciate it. All right.
Yeah, it's my birthday next week, and I'm feeling very old. But it's very cool, super cool. And again, as a techie, as a geek out on technology, I think, you see this stuff, you're like, wow, can you imagine doing that on old, Windows 3.1 and 386 computers? And, just look at where we are now. So again, from that point of view, well done. And I think it has a use case. I think there is, when I saw the demo of it yesterday, we were kind of chuckling a bit because the way there was this like fire pit. Oh, I'll walk over to the fire pit. Hey, how you doing? High five, heart, thumbs up. And I was like, yeah, that sounds a bit awkward. But there was another thing that they went over, and I can't remember the way they described it, but I could see for new starters, when you've got a whole bunch of people that are like rabbit in the headlights joining a company, and you go to that kind of induction day or whatever, if you want to try and do that virtually, it would be really good for that, because you could do some team building kind of games of it. You could do some kind of light touch stuff and have some chat, have some fun. So I think it's great for that. And again, I think for training as well. There was one example they showed, I think it was a ship, where the ship had a high turnaround. The company that had these big container ships had a high turnaround of staff. So they created the bridge of the ship, this big container ship, in mesh, and then the people could walk around and see that and interact with each other and kind of do that. So definitely use cases for it.
Yeah.
In my world, in my life, and in my day job, I think I'm not going to spend 4 hours creating my own wardrobe and custom haircut. I had a Nintendo Wii at one point, and I created like the Mii character, which was like looked almost identical to me. I'm not going to do that in mesh, I don't think. Again, I spent a lot of money on high-end camera gear, and again, my setup at home, that I don't want to do it in a cartoon. I think the other thing that's really interesting around this, and again, we were talking before we went live, we've both been in the world of video conferencing. And again, if Craig's on, again, I've worked with Craig for like 10, 12 years before coming to Crestron. And we talk about video and telepresence and all those kind of things. And the biggest thing around video is that non-verbal communication is 50, 60, 70% of whatever of communication. So it's the cues, it's the looking at you in the eyes, it's the hand gestures, it's the smiles, or the, I'm getting a bit bored and grumpy in the meeting. You're not going to get that from a cartoon character. So I think it is great. It has its use cases, and I don't want to be a grumpy old man about it. But I think it is in those use cases, not for everyone. But again, I'm sure there'll be a whole bunch of kids wearing headsets and VR headsets in the office and having their meetings in mesh and loving it. And I'll be the kind of weirdo in the corner, rocking in a chair slightly.
We'll be in the same position. Yeah, I agree.
We'll be both in the corner.
Yeah, I agree though. It's it is use case based. There are very valid use cases when it comes to different types of jobs and needing to envision things from a distance, and eventually I think even technicians working on stuff at a distance. So there's some cool things there. I agree with what you said. In the day-to-day, for the professional IT worker type of person, doing meetings and things specifically, when it comes to teams and doing mesh and meetings, that's where I'm just kind of like, I have a harder time. But I agree.
We need to get people to turn on their cameras. I mean, we for years said, again through the pandemic, it's like, we're finally getting people to turn on their blooming cameras. You don't get the initials in the circle in Teams. So we kind of got over that, but then now we're going away from that. And again, there's some people that are quite introverted and quite shy. So again, I can get it for that as well. You want to create an avatar because again, you worried or concerned.
Yeah.
The thing I like it too is that it's like self-view on video. Always turn the blooming self-view off, because you'll sit and look at it. I'm looking at it now. I'm looking at self-view, but not the camera. If I look at the camera, I get better eye contact. Whereas I look at the selfie, it looks like I've got a lazy eye. And I think that's the thing with this is that, I want to get eye contact with people. I want to see people. But if you're not comfortable being on camera, then it probably will help people maybe.
And I've heard that feedback, right? From those, I've a couple of people that have just really been resistant to camera or just not comfortable, whatever the case is. This is something, avatars is something that they've welcomed, right? And so definitely something there. And there's there's a lot of advancements, a lot of announcements and news coming out of Ignite with this. I want to call out the Teams Premium license for some of the stuff. So Teams Premium is gonna bubble to the top for a whole lot of these advanced feature sets that you may be interested in. Okay, with that, I want to not go down the rabbit hole too much further with this blog post because, like I said, it's massive. I wanted to cover Mesh and a couple things with Copilot. Let's jump over to an area that's maybe a little more near and dear to our hearts, Neil, in terms of the Teams Rooms world. And we'll talk about this blog post that is focused in on Teams Rooms and devices. Now, the first topic they queue up here is speaker recognition. This is an interesting one because, you know, we've known of Intelligent Speaker as a certified device for a while. But it appears that with this announcement in early 2024, other devices that are not necessarily certified as intelligent speakers are going to be able to do the same kind of functionality with the processing of the voice happening in the cloud instead of on the device. Much the way that IntelliFrame takes that intelligent...
IntelliFrame, not Intella. It's not Intella, it's Intelli.
We're going to have to agree to disagree on this one. There's certain pronunciations that you're just wrong about, Neil, so I'm sorry.
All right. King's English. Right,
yeah. But with the same way that the Microsoft is processing that video in the cloud instead of on your intelligent camera, they will now begin to process your audio there as well. Now, of course, this requires you to opt in and record your voice. Same with video and this upcoming facial feature recognition. You've got to enroll your face. These are all opt-in scenarios, right? You've got to go into the Teams client and actually record your voice and capture your face and do all that in order for this stuff to work. But assuming you've done that and you've opted in, then you've got this feature that's coming. So that's interesting. You know, from the OEM side of the conversation, it's interesting to see this one come around. But I guess it's kind of the same conversation that has happened with IntelliFrame. Is that correct?
Should be IntelliFrame.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Versus...
Yeah, it's an I, not an A.
Right. An I versus an A. Okay. But yeah, that versus the intelligent camera side of things. It's interesting to see how this shakes out. But that's one big announcement that's coming. We'll skip right over that piece of the blog there. Not relevant for us.
Yeah, just on that while you're skipping over that. So that training thing or that opt-in thing again. I interviewed Sandhya yesterday. That'll go out next week probably. But again, this idea of training, I guess you read it like Mary Had a Little Lamb or something, and it again changes your voice. But it's the same. It's the same opt-in for the noise suppression, which I've already forgotten the name of it. So sorry, Mark. But whatever that was called.
Voice isolation.
Again, you read Mary Had a Little. Yeah. There you go, voice isolation. It's that same opt-in. So the two are hand in hand. So once you've done one, you'll get both, kind of thing, apparently. Yeah. So again, you read it to some Chaucer or something, and it trains itself.
Yeah. Taking another blog break to come back over to our chat. Craig's had a couple comments in here, and one of them though on this last point. Before we even got into this, when we were talking about licensing, he says that is a good topic. Licensing is now confusing. What's the deal with Teams Premium versus licensing for Copilot, intelligent meeting? I think there are going to be new jobs emerging that are specific around just figuring out Teams licensing, and that we will be consulting customers on. But at the end of the day, Teams Premium is an add-on, right? And you've got your regular Teams licensing that is included with your O365 licenses. Premium's an add-on. Copilot is an add-on. Beyond that, I think Microsoft is still trying to get to the bottom of some of the features that are seemingly overlapping in those two realms. So I suspect we'll hear more from Microsoft in the months ahead in regards to those two licenses specifically. But it's a good call out. So
there's probably a breakout room down on the third floor, which is just full of people talking about licensing, I guess.
I would imagine. Imagine. I did a session at an Ignite in the past, actually. It was a little theater session, 15-minute deal, but it was breaking down all the licensing nuances with calling, meetings, Teams, all that stuff. And back then it was in depth. Now it's even more just, so anyway, this is really cool for your Windows devices when it comes to deploying them. This, ironically, Android is always kind of been behind Windows in the Teams Rooms world, right? Everyone knows, and Microsoft hasn't been coy about saying we're innovating on Windows-based solutions first. Those devices will come to Android afterwards. We always strive for parity, but in general, the Windows side is always going to be a step ahead or two. But on Android, that was the one area where you could kind of pre-provision these devices and have a low-touch deployment scenario for Android-based room systems, and you didn't get that with the Windows side. So that was kind of the one area where I was like, well, that's interesting that you can do that in Android but not Windows. These announcements, however, address that. You've got this Windows Autopilot and auto login of Teams rooms, and the gist of it is really cool. If the device is eligible for Windows Autopilot, you get these devices set up ahead of time, and then as they say in here, simply plug in the Teams device, turn it on, and within hours, the device will be provisioned, signed in, and ready to use. That's a huge amount of headache removed from the integrator side of things, especially if you've got an integrator involved in your deployment. But the IT admin side in general, that's a big deal. And then, if you have devices that are not eligible for Windows Autopilot, then you can talk about this one-time password situation, which again is that kind of low-touch experience that you had for Android. You kind of get that same thing going on now for Windows, where I'm not giving you the credentials to the room, local IT admin that's going to install this thing. I'm going to give you this one-time password to get this thing signed in, and that way I'm preserving the integrity of the account that's signed into that room as an IT admin. So really good advancements when it comes to deployment of Teams rooms on Windows.
Yeah, I love that. Again, Android has always been that kind of like, you just plug a couple of cables in and nail it on the wall and you're done. Yeah. Windows was always seen as it was always feature first, and there was always some features that might actually not be able to come to Android because essentially it's just a cell phone processor in a bar and a camera. When you got loads of power on an Intel x86 i5 running Windows 11, but the fact that now it really simplifies that deployment, and we're getting table stakes and parity with Android from a deployment point of view is great. So I love that.
Yeah, it's going to be a very welcome advancement, I think, for a lot of IT organizations. Coming down to this, this is, a lot of people have asked for this from Microsoft quite a while, which is remote access to a Teams rooms on Windows. The picture kind of gives you an idea of what this may look like. Notice they say it's coming to the Pro Management Portal in 2024. Keywords there, Pro Portal. Okay, not regular Teams Admin Center. And in 2024, they typically will say Q1 or first half, or they don't bother with any of that. They say 2024, so don't be sitting on pins and needles waiting when January rolls around. This is coming sometime next year. But the idea is, an IT admin can remotely go in, troubleshoot, triage, get a view of what's going on in the room. However, it's not like this is a new concept to the industry. Crestron's already kind of tackled this in some ways, correct?
Yeah, I think again Jimmy's on, so he'll know all about this capability. So it's a bit like, we've had it for ages in XIO Cloud, the ability to remotely control the controller in the room. Again, it's great from a concierge point of view, I guess, or a troubleshooting point of view. It's like, I'm having problems with this thing. Can you come and look at it for me? Or again, just being able to remote into the system. But it's great. There's going to be in the Teams Admin Center as well. And it gives the other OEMs the ability to try and catch up with what we've already had for a while at Crestron with XIO Cloud. But it's great. Again, I think having that ability to reach into the room is good.
It's right, and so but it begs the question naturally though, because this is Teams rooms on Windows very specifically, right? So that question, not question, but statement literally came out yesterday on X, where we had Matt Ellis highlighted this and said hallelujah, and was happy to see that coming. And Ilya Buchstein over at Microsoft, who is vice president over Teams devices, right? Yeah, some people have kind of know who Ilya is. He's excited for it, happy to see it there, and says Windows only for now, but hope to also bring it to Android over time. I seized on that statement and reposted Ilya's statement and said, let's seize on this, because I already saw some questions out there the other day about the Android piece of this. Remote access is Windows only today, but hope is on the horizon for Android. And Ilya did comment on that as well to get a little more granular on that last statement and just let us know there's hope, just maybe not on the horizon, right? So don't look at that as
maybe it's good. Yeah, maybe it's going to be in the Android version that Microsoft's bringing out. I can't remember what's the name of that the platform that they're bringing out. So maybe it's on their
or Microsoft Devices ecosystem platform. Yeah,
that's it. Yeah, maybe it's going to be a capability of that. Maybe because again, I guess there's probably a whole bunch of. I mean, there's the whole difference between something being capable and able to do it. And then there's the security and all of that challenge. So because they don't control, which OEMs are using Android 12, 11, 13, 19, whatever it might be, Candy Cake, whatever it's called now.
Yeah.
Once they get that controllable MDEP platform that they manage, they control the security, they've got end-to-end encryption and security through that, then they can probably do that. But it's probably really hard for them to, again, like Windows, they control the operating system. They've got end-to-end security and encryption through that, no problem.
Yeah.
When it comes to Android, it's a can of worms. So again, I would guess, I'm just speculating and guessing, that's possibly why it's harder for them, because it's a can of worms that they can't control and manage
right
end to end.
And that's exactly, he calls it out here. He says, I say all of this because we are partnering with the Intune team to investigate what they have for remote access on Android. But we do not have a technical path forward yet. So that says volumes right there. There is not a technical path forward yet. It's being investigated. They want to get there. There's hope for it. So if any of you are wondering on the Android side, that is the status as of now, directly from Ilya on X. We'll come back over here and scroll on down from that. The Teams the Teams apps app, that's not confusing, is being updated to include Teams certified devices, so that directly from within Teams, you can now go and peruse devices that may fit your use case or your room that you're looking at or whatever the case is, and even a path forward for potentially purchasing those from there. That, to me, sounds like a potential can of worms right there, purchasing through the App Store directly through this. I mean, when it comes to expensing or approving things, maybe they can build in Power BI workflows. I don't know, but that's coming. Could be a helpful thing for organizations that are very large and need to find a way to kind of share what's available. We'd already talked earlier about the Insights report and how that's expanding with BYOD and more there. So Microsoft's only improving that experience to help IT orgs make better purchasing decisions. As you just called out, Microsoft Devices Ecosystem Platform. I much prefer to say MDEP for short. My esteemed colleague, Michael Tressler, likes to call it Windroid. That's his nickname for it. But
love it.
It was called out in March as coming, and they are kind of giving us a little update in this paragraph here, saying still coming, still is what we said it is. The first device taking advantage of it is going to be of the new platform is going to be the Panicast 50 video bar system from Jabra. Who
I've heard of that. I don't know who makes that. Is that something we know?
They put some devices out there in the certified space. Turns out, so. Okay. And this is a relatively new one that we'll be getting an update at some point, which is what they say. It's going to receive an update to support the Microsoft Device Ecosystem Platform next year. Let me call out the vagueness of that statement once again. Next year. So, Panicast 50 video bar system out now. That an update will come to it in next year to have this. It'll be the first device with that experience. And then, of course, beyond that, other Android certified devices in the space will support the platform as well. And Microsoft has kind of made it clear, and with their positioning earlier and kind of some AMAs with Ilya, that this will be an experience where they're not forcing this operating system onto the Android certified devices, but they're making it available as an option to the OEMs. So it'll be interesting to see how each OEM embraces that or adopts it over time. And I'm sure that'll, define how customers approach the whole conversation. But there's an update.
It's a real challenge. I mean, again, in a previous life, there was that thing around Microsoft and Teams brought out because Google end of supported or stopped doing security patches for a certain version of Android. It was 7 or 8 or 9, whatever it was. And all of the OEMs that were doing Android Pearl were in a complete tailspin because they were using older Qualcomm Snapdragon processors like the 835. And Qualcomm was saying, well, we don't support anything more than Android 9 on those. So all of those OEMs were then having to go to like third parties to then port versions of Android to get them to work on, older 835. Again, this is like Galaxy S8 if you're into Android phones, like 2016 processors. And they were having to get those up to Android 12, 11, 13. And again, if you've ever had like an iPhone, any kind of cell phone, when a new version of software, it always kind of slows down because there's more stuff in there. So again, there's that challenge. And again, if Microsoft can control the end-to-end security, which they can for Windows, it's their operating system, if they can do the same thing for the Android space as well, then it's going to give customers peace of mind that says, okay, I'm not going to be left in that hole of if, Google suddenly say, well, we're not going to any more security patches for Android 13 or whatever it is, or 14 or whatever it is then. Microsoft can go, okay, well, we own the operating system. It's our version of Android, so we will support it. Whereas they couldn't do that for a generic Android version. So I think it's really positive from that point of view, not only for the OEMs, but also the customers that were in that kind of state of flux of like, oh, I bought these whatever bars a year ago, 2 years ago, however long, and suddenly they're all going to be unsupported by Microsoft and unsupported by the vendor because it's got an old version of Android that I can't get security patches on. So
it's absolutely.
I love the idea of it.
It's absolutely the case.
I love the idea about it.
There are customers that maybe are like, hey, I like this device, I like this bar. However, my security team is going to implode on themselves if they have to try to validate another third-party operating system for our environment. As soon as you change that conversation and say, well, it's Microsoft's operating system, even though it's an Android-based operating system, that changes everything. So it'll be interesting to watch that in 2024 as it evolves throughout the ecosystem. But okay, so new features coming to Teams Rooms on Windows. This one is pretty cool. You want to touch on this? This is joining meetings fast with ultrasonic proximity. What's the deal there?
Yeah. Well, it's funny. So again, Craig's on. We did ultrasonic pairing donkeys years ago in a previous slice, so that's cool. But it's always been Bluetooth, and I think there's a couple of challenges with Bluetooth pairing that there was in Teams. Firstly is the range of Bluetooth is quite vast now. The antennas that they're putting in laptops is pretty vast. So you go into a meeting room and you'd be able to pick up the sort of 2 or 3 meeting rooms either side. So you didn't want that kind of like, oh, I'm going to connect to the wrong room. But then there's also the fact that, I think most laptops have got Bluetooth, but there's still probably some older laptops in public sector, government places maybe that either have to turn Bluetooth off. Because it's a radio and they don't allow radios, or they just don't have it because they've got older laptops. So the fact that it's now going to be an acoustic ultrasonic beacon, it's just going to be picked up by the microphone of the laptop, I think is great because it's going to be in a closer proximity, so you're not going to get a flood of like 3 or 4 different meeting rooms. It's probably only going to get, it's not the audio waves aren't going to go through the wall. So it's only going to give you that local room that you walk into. And it's kind of for everybody because again, if you've got a microphone on your laptop, you're golden. So I think again, it's a really good thing. So I like that,
and hopefully that helps address some of the security concerns from some orgs when it comes to using Bluetooth. This is an alternate wireless option for them. So you made that whole thing sound so much more intelligent than I would have described it. So thanks for taking the wheel on that one. That's good.
But it's a use case thing as well, because that's the thing. You want to try and the friction of going into a meeting room. Someone goes into a meeting room, they want to share content. They don't want to use the HDMI cable. They just want to use the Teams app because that's what they're used to. Having to then go and find that meeting, join it from the laptop. Again, you've got a meeting on the calendar of the Teams room system. How do I get that meeting to my laptop? The fact that you're going to walk in and suddenly, bing, it pops up. It just, again, it makes less friction to being able to bring additional devices into the meeting. So from a user's point of view, it just makes life easier. We like making life easier. Yes. Sorry.
No. Good commentary on it. So yeah, I think it's a very welcome advancement in the room. Wireless connectivity is always a question, especially when it comes to sharing devices or joining in. So I think that's going to be a very welcome thing for most companies. The newly announced Teams Town Hall, Teams live events coming from that world. Town Hall coming to Teams Rooms next year. So Teams Rooms can still participate in town halls, but until next year, they're not going to, have that direct involvement in the production of the town hall until it comes out. So that's coming. Keep an eye out for that. That's important to your organization. Service Hub 3 now runs.
That's
Teams
Windows
Rooms.
good, isn't it? I think it's the town hall Windows and Android, or is it just on Windows?
I don't believe that they call that out for just Windows. I think they don't call it out in here for just Windows. So
if you know, put it in the comments down below. Let's interact with the audience. Ask the audience. If you know, stick it in the comments below.
Please do. Yes, let's do that.
Okay. All about the interaction.
All about it. Yeah, it's been ever since Craig's last comment. Maybe people have like dozed off. That might have been what happened at this stage. But
wake up.
I'm trying to be interesting, and Neil is definitely carrying the show here. But okay. Surface Hub 3 now running Teams Rooms on Windows. So those of you that are Surface Hub customers are looking into it. There's that option for the all-in-one route. And there's, of course, a management story within the Pro Management portal there as well. So there's good advancements there. But on top of that, Surface Hub is going to be the first device, or is the first device, to support the 4K experience for Teams Rooms on Windows. This does say Teams Rooms on Windows, not Android. And support for more 4K devices will be coming soon. So a lot of people have been eager to know when 4K support is coming. There you go. Microsoft's getting into that realm finally. So that's there. All kinds of improvements when it comes to optimizing the screen, the gallery, the video feeds. Most of that is like AI enhanced. There's some kind of smart, intelligent component to how we're laying out the screen or doing things. You talked about that much earlier in the show. And then optimized front row. This is a piece of that I will call out because I always kind of felt it a little troubling when you weren't sharing content to have this big content space not filled and all the speakers and people just sat in the gallery below. So what this optimization does is puts that active speaker prominently in that space where your content would normally be if you're not sharing content. So welcome advancement to front row. Yep, again, more optimizations for the way people are laid out. The news on Teams Rooms for Android, there's some stuff here about Teams Rooms, Android supporting Teams Premium functionality as it comes to end-to-end encryption or watermarks. You got an enhanced console calendar, a few other things, nothing that I really wanted to spend too much time on. Spaces, though. There's a lot of little bullet points in here about Spaces. Microsoft started talking about that long ago, and we're now seeing some of that.
It went a bit quiet for a while.
It has. It really, they talked about it. Everyone's like, that's going to be awesome. And then it's been super quiet. However, we've got a lot of that being announced now. There's devices out there in that space that are being certified or have been, beginning to be, will be, etc. But they're building out that whole platform to where it's going to become easier to book these spaces, at the desk in some cases, to collect data on your bookings so that you can better utilize your spaces that are open for booking as well. Looking at these reports down here. So a lot is happening. Again, automatically book desks without a reservation. Yeah.
I wonder whether, because obviously, there's this whole, and Craig talked elegantly about this, way more elegantly than I can. But the idea that the companies still probably haven't worked out what their return to office policy is still. And again, there's dynamics in different countries and regions and such like. But I wonder if it's kind of paused, or they kind of paused it slightly because they didn't know how many people are going back to the office. Are companies, going to have different policies for this? And Microsoft didn't want to go sort of, jump in with both feet until they kind of got more of a steer of the industry and out there as to how people were going to go. Again, Craig talks about Taco Tuesdays and Thirsty Thursdays and things like that. But I do wonder as maybe that was the catalyst that made them just sort of put a pause or slow down slightly, so they saw what was going on out there in the world and then say, okay, now we can better develop the tools to support those customers that are going to go, 3 days a week, 4 days a week, hybrid and all the rest of it. The interesting is, I think there's more devices now coming out. I mean, Crestron have got the Desk Touch. Yeah. Obviously the Logi one was quoted in there, which is a sort of full docking station as well. It's quite a meaty thing. If you want to go all in on that. And there is another, so there does seem to be more hardware coming out. So again, maybe it was a bit chicken and egg of like, hardware vendors, spinning up the hardware for the desk, and then obviously Microsoft providing the back end for that. But very welcome. And again, we get a lot of interest around it from the customers. We've got Desk Touch upstairs in the hub here. A lot of people going, oh, what's that? What does that do? So it's in fact, Sandia even I've got a picture of Sandia on it.
Yeah, I mean, both the spaces concept and the devices around them is just going to be increasingly important in the growing hybrid conundrum conversation of how many people are coming back to work, in what capacity are they coming back, how many of them are there, what do we do with these spaces that looked different previously that we now need to figure out how to kind of physically restructure to where it makes sense. A lot of real estate questions up in the air, and spaces and those devices are going to be at the center of that conversation all the way through. So completely agree. BYOD meetings. This is one where intelligent speakers, previously only available for Teams rooms scenarios, right? They're now also going to be supported for your BYOD meeting rooms. So not only are we having management improvements with BYOD when it comes to Microsoft Teams rooms, but we are now going to be able to support the intelligent speaker side of things through those BYOD scenarios. So that way you've got meeting transcripts, other things like Copilot, Intelligent Meeting Recap can take advantage of those people identified in those rooms, even though it was a BYOD setup. They call it devices like the Jabra PanaCast 50 or other certified intelligent speakers will be able to be utilized for this in those rooms.
There's 3 at the moment, isn't there? There's the EPOS, Sennheiser, and then with the VP4 update on now, get that free software. We talked about that at InfoComm, I think, and it's now available. So I think those are the only 3. But yeah, there is rumors that more are coming to the club.
And I think Yealink has one too, I believe.
Okay, cool.
I believe. But they're all the center of rooms. And then the PanaCast, like you said, the PanaCast 50 very recently certified in that category, which is a different form factor because instead of being a center of table, it's front of room. And in any case, all those devices fall into this category of, hey, this could be a BYOD room. Those devices can be used to identify who's in the room and use that for intelligent purposes later. So, yep. But will be interesting to see kind of with the announcement at the very top of the page on how other devices are going to have that capability. It'd be interesting to see how BYOD falls into that category too. But okay, a little bit more. Discover peripherals in your BYOD rooms through the Pro Management Portal. Again, enhancements to managing your BYOD setups. And that brings us to the end of this blog, which is pretty much right on time. I thought we'd go for 30 minutes, but it's a lot of fun talking to you, Neil. So we've knocked out almost an hour.
Great fun. We should do it more often.
We should get together and talk more often. We'll look at the stats after this and see how many people care to listen to us collectively and go from there, right? But no, this has been good. I appreciate you taking the time. It looks like you mentioned, maybe that keynote has let out. There's more people behind you.
There's more people. Do you want to know it? So there's people randomly. There's some people here. Let's say hi. We're live streaming on the internet. There you go.
What's going on, Ignite? All right.
There you go. That's people coming up there. They're all waking up. They've had their coffee. They've been to the keynote, and now they're coming out and wondering who this guy is shouting on the steps there.
And you know what? At least in the stream, I hear nothing. That headset is really doing the trick for you. So there you go.
I can't. Everyone said you're not paying me. I don't work for Jabra. But the Flex 65 is bloody awesome. Excuse my French. Bloody awesome headset.
So. I've got to ask: is that as a non proper English speaker? Is that a French word on the English side to say that? Is that
no? Not at all. It's a superlative. But my other takeaway from Copilot is everyone was super excited here. I wanted someone to be grumpy about something or mildly something less exciting. And say it was like, oh, we're really excited about this. We're really excited about that. I want someone to be, mildly interested in a new feature or some different superlatives.
Yeah.
No, bloody is not French. But, it's a superlative to say how great the Flex 65 is.
And when I say French, I don't mean literal French, but is that one of those oh, don't say that? Will it be filtered out as vulgar in the transcript if you have that setting toggled on?
Well, that's an interesting thing. Again, we can maybe check that out later. I don't know. I think it's a mild swear word. I can probably get away with it as a British guy, but there's definitely some interesting nuances that I've had some conversations with some Americans this week about different terms in British English and American English. So, let alone Intella, Intelli, and Intelli framing.
Right. Yeah, one of those. Yeah, exactly. I'm wondering if maybe the feature there, if you have it toggled on, the transcript will actually feature out. It won't block out if you're using it as an English person, but if you're not English and using it, maybe it says no, and it's
U.S. English versus King's English.
That's what it is. Yeah. Great, Neil. Thank you for joining me today. This has been awesome. It's great to get that in-person feel and context from someone else in the industry. I hope this was helpful. to everybody there. Thank you to those of you that were participating in the chat. I'm gonna throw this little chat overlay on there if I can. Maybe I can't. No, I've got to play with that in the settings later. But
is there anyone in there who can we? Let's shout them out. Who's in there? Give us some names. We had Craig,
we've got
Jimmy. Who else?
Craig, Jimmy, Mark Whitaker. We've had, and then just here, Nick Schlee said, "Love the insights. Great conversation. Thanks. Appreciate hearing that, Nick. That's awesome." So we had a good engagement in there, and I appreciate people tuning in.
Okay, cool.
This was going out to LinkedIn, YouTube, and X, so we'll check all those. But thank you all for participating. Like Neil said, we should do this more often. Maybe we'll get together once in a while and just kind of cover what's new from different events or just announcements. But thank you. Any final words before we shut this party down?
No, it's been a blast, and yeah, it's great to come on and great to talk about some of the features that are out here. And again, I'm loving Ignite. Again, I'm so blessed to be able to get the opportunity to come out here, and so I'm hoping to come back again. I feel as a very Microsoft, and I'm going to the Hive tomorrow. So I'm going to the mothership.
Yeah.
So I'm going to be super excited tomorrow. Because I'm going to be a kid in a toy shop at the Hive with Greg, and he's giving me a full tour.
That's awesome.
So again, stay tuned for some videos. I've got some videos coming out. I'll plug mine. I've got some videos coming out, and we'll do some stuff at the Hive. So if you're not following me, why not? Go and follow me on socials as well. I'm almost as good as John.
If I were thinking, I would have included that in my little overlays and OBS tier to like get the pictures.
There you go.
But it's look him up. Look Neil Flooster on LinkedIn. Follow him. Make sure you're going to stay up to date with what's going on in the space. So thanks again for joining me. Let's go ahead and shut this party down. I'm going to hit stop streaming, and I hope the rest of you enjoy your Ignite, whether you are there, lucky people, or whether you are from afar suffering from FOMO. Thanks.